Senator Scott went to vote, so is Senator Rosen available?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to all the witnesses here today. I want to start out by saying, as members of Congress, we take an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We have a responsibility to our constituents and our nation to defend our democratic process. With that being said, Mr. Krebs, we thank you for your service to our nation and for upholding your oath to defend the Constitution from foreign and domestic threats. Your efforts to protect the integrity of our democratic process help ensure that the 2020 election was the most secure in American history, as certified by the Department of Homeland Security. I'd also publicly like to thank Nevada's election workers, who, despite Mr. Bunnell's comments in the media and here today, worked long hours to ensure that Nevada's elections were free, fair, and secure. Both our Republican Secretary of State and our Democratic Attorney General have stated there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud that occurred in Nevada, and our highest court has said the same, and I will not give this false narrative about my state any more attention than it has already unfortunately received. However, we do know that foreign adversaries like Russia have peddled false narratives. September 3rd, the Department of Homeland Security warned that Russia has been spreading disinformation about the integrity of U.S. elections since March. This evidence is alarming. According to Althea Group, ahead of the election, Russian media sources like RT and Sputnik were already pushing the narrative that the U.S. would not conduct free and fair elections. Last month, the Election Integrity Partnership found that social media accounts tied to Russian Internet Research Agency amplified claims of election fraud leading up to the 2020 election. Mr. Krebs, to reiterate, were there any election systems successfully hacked by foreign adversaries in the 2020 election?
Ma'am, having been out of the job now for 5 weeks or so, based on what I understood when I left, I'm not aware of any voting machine involved in the casting or counting of votes in this election or the certification process that was accessed by a foreign adversary.
Thank you. So I want to just emphasize the difference between election interference and influence. So we know our election infrastructure was secure from interference. I want to turn to the issue of foreign influence campaigns. In your view, did adversaries succeed in amplifying the false perception our election process was fraudulent? And really, can you explain how domestic actors amplified foreign disinformation campaigns and how that undermines confidence in our democratic process?
I think what we saw, I believe it was October 22nd, we did see some Iranian efforts. I've talked about this before, where there were some emails that popped up on that day claiming to be purportedly from at least the Proud Boys that were talking about, sent specifically to Democratic voters. It said, you need to change your registration and vote for President Trump. If you don't, we will find you and take care of business, I guess. The issue there is that ballot secrecy is the law in all 50 states. And so we identified that issue, we isolated it, and then put up a rumor control debunker. And in the meantime, in the ensuing 27 hours, we were able to determine that that was in fact an Iranian operation. And I think what was one of the true success stories of the Protect 2020 effort and defending democracy this time around was the fact that rather than, 4 months, in 27 hours, we went from detection to sharing that information with the American people. There is one element that doesn't get a lot of play, though, is that prior to making that assessment, following up on my commitment to our partners in the state and local election community, we held a call with the election officials and said, look, this is what we're seeing, you need to know this, and then we went to the public.
Mr. Krebs, I just have about 2.5 minutes left, so I would like to yield the rest of my time to you, because you did take an oath to uphold the Constitution when you were sworn in as director of CISA. And so I want you to address anything that you feel we haven't already asked today and give you an opportunity to speak in the last 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you for that courtesy. Look, I could not be more proud of my team at CISA for the work they did, not just protecting the 2020 election, But in getting through the last 9 months of all the stresses that COVID placed on the workforce and coming to work each day, whether they're sitting at home, out in the field, or the limited folks that came into the office. So that's point one. Point two was, I firmly believe that this Protect 2020 effort, working with our partners in the federal government, whether it was in the intelligence community or the Department of Defense, was the single best representation of a unified government effort. Everybody got it. There were no turf wars. There was no parochialism. Everybody was on the same page. So we were defending democracy. The last thing I'll say is that the real heroes here are the state and local election workers out there across the country, the hundreds of thousands of election workers that risk their lives. And that's not a joke, right? There's a global pandemic. There's COVID spreading across the country. They went to work so that you and I could go vote and cast our decision here, contribute to this process. They had to deal with incredible adversity. And then at the end of it, risking their lives, they get death threats for doing their jobs, for standing up, speaking truth to power, putting country over party. That's got to end. We're going to have to move past this somehow. I've said before that democracy, yeah, we survived this, I think. It was strong enough to survive, but democracy in general is fragile. It requires commitment and follow through on both sides. If a party fails to participate in the process and instead undermines the process, we risk losing that democracy. We have to come back together as a country.
Again, I thank you for being here. I thank you for you and your teams around the country for keeping us safe and working so hard in this past election. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rosen.